official Friday meeting, I would say, in the first quarter. So you have that time frame to as slowly or as quickly blow through something. And like I think I said this to Alex, I didn't say this to you, Trev. I mean, this could be as simple as like a paper, like a video essay, like a presentation. So presentation is going to have to be probably at least 30 minutes. Same as this video essay. We'll kind of talk about that and flesh out the details as we go week to week. But is there any other format that you guys would want to like compile your information or like stuff like that? No, it's pretty standard. If you think of another idea and you're like, hey, I want to try this instead, that's cool too. And along with this, like, I don't know if this was clear either. You can do like a like not a, I guess it would be like a research project, like a test, right? So it's like, hey, like here's what I'm thinking for my project. I want to take these 5 athletes, and like for the next 3 months, I want to run a program block with a pre-test and a post-test to see if like my theory works, or if you have a theory, or you think, hey, like we should try this. I'm gonna take a select few group of people. You obviously kind of have to connect with them first, and let them know like what's going on and get them pre-approved with everybody else. But yeah, that'd be fun too. And that's something where it's like, hey, like maybe like that's not probably what we're gonna do. Maybe until the end of the year, like you get like 2 or 3 of these under your belt first, and you feel like, hey, like I feel like I've developed a really good base from which now I can kind of try to create something of my own. That'd be a good idea to do that. And then I was thinking about this, like this could be either kind of codependent with your research, or it could be something that's completely obscure. And it's not like I'm gonna like have you do your own thing, like in the sense that we're like, I'm just gonna have you like read and do your thing, and then you're gonna show up and I expect you to know like 3 questions that like you would know nothing about. Like it's gonna be targeted to kind of like what you're doing. And it's really just like accountability. Like they're not supposed to be tough. They're not supposed to be anything. If anything, like think a little bit more critically, and it should just be kind of whatever resource you're digging into at the time. That should be pretty apparent, like what you're looking for in there based off the questions. I mean, what do you guys have any questions, any thoughts, any like ideas, or anything you want to do differently with this, or what it looks like, or any input? I guess I should say.
I was just thinking maybe some examples, as my brain's going like all over the place. You know.
Well, tell me where your brain's at. What are you thinking?
So I think it would be smart for me to hone in on programming.
Okay.
So like a research idea, I just don't know where I should take that.
Yeah, and then this is the meeting to kind of take that. So programming. You could do a lot of things with that, right? You could do. You could pick literally one aspect of programming. You could pick like an all-encompassing like program. You could think of like, hey, this is what the books say about building out like a periodization, which is a program. So it's like over how many weeks. It's broken up into like a such and such a phase. So like a meso would be like your like monthly. Your macro would be like your yearly, and your micro would be like your weekly program. So we run mesocycle, alternating mesocycles, which is an accumulation block and an intensification block. All right. Whereas like what a lot of people will do is they'll run like a 3 meso, like so like a 3-month, like 12-week block of like hypertrophy, and then like you run a 12-week block of strength, and then you usually run like a taper block of like speed power, and then usually you compete. That's like how that is like every like old school book, whether it's like super training or like science of practices or like science of sport training, like all those books over there, like, or even like West Side, like that's all like basic old school programming. Is kind of how that rolls, and we have books on that. And there's also, you could take that with, maybe it's like, hey, that's a good place to start, but if you want to do more like how would I program for such and such individual with like these constraints, right? Like, hey, like I have a guy with a bum knee.
Injury.
Yeah, just like stuff like that.
There's a lot of things you can do in season, out of season stuff you can do.
Right.
Accumulation, intensification. There's a lot of stuff you could take it with. And programming is like.
Yeah. So so here's a better filter for this. So like what's the whole point of this? Why are we doing this in the first place?
To get us better.
Mm-hmm.
At
But like,
jobs.
yeah, like. Is like I'm trying to like help you guys, right? Because like I know like both of you have voiced to me personally and in front of everybody else, like you guys want to be like independent in this place, in the sense that like you want to feel like you have a very good grasp of what's going on. You don't want to have like you want to be like almost like the authority when you guys are out there, which like you are for sure. But like I know like you said you want to know the why behind everything, and you said you want to just be the best you can absolutely be. All right, and like. I think those are both pretty broad, but like now, like from here, we can kind of narrow down the whys and like stuff like that. So like the whole point of this is like I'm in the hopes that like you pick something that you feel like, dang, like gosh, like I still don't get this, or like geez, like I just feel like exposed when like people ask me this question, or I feel like if like somebody were to ask me this, like, I wouldn't know how to respond. And it's like, what's gonna help you really just kind of block everything out, and then like let's just like hyper focus on this thing. And you'll find honestly like. I know, like, especially, like, if you weren't in school, like, I think this could get done in, honestly, like, a month. But, like, I want you to take your time. I want it to be well done. And even for you, like, with you getting more freedom time with the adults, like, take your time. Like, it can be it doesn't have, just because it's 3 months doesn't mean it's like, hey, you're at a paper. I don't want to read, like, a 12-page paper. Well, I probably would. But it would be, it's just, like, whatever you want to do. However you want to assemble it, like, work on that too, because like that in and of itself is a skill in this industry for sure. And like presenting and like using this for like your social media posts, be like, hey, like I was like reading about this today, it gave me this idea. It's like, oh, hey, do you guys know like sets and rep schemes, like why they're so important? Like, and like you could literally make like 3 months worth of just social media posts off of like this one topic you're kind of just deep diving into, and it's cool. But no, I think back to what I was saying, it's just like, this is for you, this is kind of what you think you need right now. Because like truthfully, like I could give you something to do, but like I just don't think it'd be as fun for you guys. Because like truth, like we shouldn't all want to be into the same things, because then it's like we're gonna be a very one-dimensional facility, right? And like we do speed better, like obviously, and like that's always gonna be like kind of our core. But I think like more opportunities are going to arise from like people like, hey, like the injury guy, or not even like the injury guy, but like specifically like the shoulder guy, or like the hip guy, or like like the ankle guy. Like having those in like your back pocket are extremely valuable, and especially in a community like this, like people like talk about stuff like that amongst each other a ton. So it's like there's a guy over in like Grand Rapids who's like specifically known for like fixing ankle sprains very quickly. Like people will drive 45 minutes out that way to like go see him for like an hour and pay a lot of money. So it's just like, if you're worth it, and like if you really know your stuff, like it's gonna pay off for everybody. So
Alex, where are you kind of leaning towards?
Well, I mean, my whole focus right now is going to be like plyometrics for a little while, or like plyometrics versus jump training, or not first, but like kind of the differences and like how to classify and like just be smarter in that area. But as far as like presenting like research on it, like I think I might want to figure out a way, but like either test it or just explaining like the differences, like you can read in any like textbook, right? But like trying to figure out something to do.
So
with
just
it.
more knowledge basically. And
Yeah,
presenting
more
knowledge.
applicable to like stuff that we do here,
Right.
like.
yeah, for sure. Like he made a good point. Like the point of this is not to copy. Like don't think like school, right? Like this is almost like a live stream like note taking session where it's like, hey, like yes, like I need to know this information because for like some of it's going to be some stuff you're hearing for the first time, or some of it's going to be stuff that's like you haven't heard in a long time. So like it's important to know that, but it's like know that like at the end of the day, like I need you guys to like obviously take something from this, but I probably already have heard it. So it's like if I wanted to like not necessarily see this information, I could probably just open up the book that I let you use. So it's like I'm not looking for like awesome definitions and awesome quotes out of his books. That should be a small piece of it, but I think, like you said, like how this is applicable, like the application piece is ultimately the biggest thing. And this kind of came in my head as you were saying that, like, if we were to build out like a pyramid of like a strength coach, what would this look like? Like, I'm talking about like skills and abilities. You said what?
I was gonna say characteristics of him, or like skills.
Yeah, well, yeah, like even like what do you need? Like, what do you think is like? What do you need to know? Like, I don't have anything set in my head for this at all. I was gonna see if we could kind of do this together.
I feel like form is a very big one.
I would say the base would probably be something along the lines of like, do no harm.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like, we have to know.
Technique.
So
we
what-
have to know. We have to know enough about human movement to what is going to harm someone and what is not.
So like human
Based on-
anatomy stuff.
I mean, to a degree.
That's 100% what I was thinking, Trevor. Right? Like gross anatomy, and so gross anatomy just like all encompassing. That's a great place to start, right? Because I mean, it's really like it's like studying like oil filters only, but you're trying to be a car mechanic, right? Like you're like, okay, like I get this, like that, like you can talk about the, like the different types of oil, you can talk about the different way it's synthesized, like what size filter and all that stuff. But until you're like, hey, like what does an oil filter even, like what does oil do for a car? Like I literally like cleans the gas, right? I don't even know.
Keeps it cool.
Yeah, see, so like,
Helps everything flow.
yeah, like if we don't know like how a muscle contracts, how are we gonna like? It's like it's great to know like how to get someone bigger, but it's like if we really don't know what's going on underneath the skin, there's a lot, and it's like everything within the body. The more I'm starting to find out is more. It's like you got to think like big time like network, right? Like nothing works independently. Even like doing something as easy as just like reaching out my arm and like squeezing this, like that. Everything in your body is doing something at some point. And so like to understand how, like you said, like broadly, right? Like it would be better to start somewhere here, and then kind of narrow in as you get like, and that's why it's at the base, right? Because as we get close to this top, this is gonna be like how you build out like yourself, right? And then like from there you can go into, because like if you don't understand this, we're not gonna understand something like FMP, which I'll just call like fundamental movement patterns. That's like your squat, hinge, deadlift, like stuff like that, like trainable like movements, like compound lifts, stuff like that. But even like within this, like this would be like body systems, like
Biomechanics.
well, biomechanics would kind of fall under this, I would say. But like, so yeah, I would probably put biomechanics, but not even more so that, like biomechanics and where's it going with this? Oh, just like the systems of the body, right? So like we talk about all the time, right? Like testosterone, Trev. Like that's a very key hormone, especially like we're working with youth athletes who like it's usually at an all-time high right about now, which is like if we know how to leverage that, that's great. But it's like same thing with like everything else. It doesn't work independently, right? Like your estrogen and your testosterone complement each other. So it's like how is that working? And then it's like that's gonna have influences on like your insulin and like glucose like usability, like response, if you want to call it that, or how you digest food or how you sleep, like dramatically impacts all this stuff. So it's just like, it's really easy to talk about this stuff and get super overwhelmed, but like i.e. hence the research, like let's just like try not to get bogged down with like the fact that there's so much stuff that like, you know, an entire lifetime on this earth isn't gonna like get you to where you want to be, unfortunately. Which is like super frustrating, right? Like it's like it's like life's hard enough, right? Like there's no like you never see like an end, but I really think like stuff like this is like one, you have to know, you don't need to know all the muscles and bones, but you have to know how they function, like what they do, and like basically where they are roughly. Okay, like there are some coaches out there who don't really know this and they've gotten right just fine. In my personal opinion, this stuff makes way more sense to me. So if it doesn't make sense to you, I'm not saying like you need to be good at this, but you definitely should be familiar with it. Because then this makes more sense, this makes more sense. Injuries make a heck of a lot more sense because you understand like why, like what's preventing it, and then how to even restore stuff like that. And then like stuff like this starts to make even like tremendously more sense because like within this you have a certain degree of like joint range of motions, right? So it's like the more this goes on, like the more people are gonna rely on like strength coaches to be more like physical therapists. And like, yeah, you kind of saw me get in that earlier in the summer, but like it's like trending that way to where it's like strength coaches like can help people, like in my opinion, like significantly more than like your traditional like I'm gonna go to like physical therapy, do my band exercises, like stand on a posted ball, like get better abs, and like come back and be fine. Right? Because like that gets you to a point to be ready to train, and then it's like then it's our job to like actually help them get back to do what they want to do. And like they have like they're doctors, right? So like they have this stuff like pegged down, which is helpful. And like I said, you don't need to know nearly, like I think they know probably a lot more minutia than for what they need to know, especially like early stage rehab stuff like that. Like that's important to know that stuff. Whereas stuff like this is good to know, but like a bulk of the time is going to be kind of probably spent in the middle here.
Would you say programming would be next? Or like knowing more like sets and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I was probably gonna work. I think we were gonna work up to that right about now. Like I said, I don't have a set idea in this mind. I'm just kind of writing ideas down, and we probably can like.
Well, after you can, for functional movement patterns, you mean like being able to identify like proper like form and proper.
So
and stuff like
I'll
that.
say this: if you understand this, you also understand this by default, because if you know the action of a hip flexor muscle, you'll understand how much hip flexion is available in most people, how low they can sit in a squat, and it's like, hey, do they have issues with their hips because like there's a restriction in the tissue, right? So we always talk about like, oh, tight, short, stiff. It's like, yes, but like also like people have different like pelvis orientations to where like some people have a really deep hip socket, so like squatting just hurts because like they literally the head of their femur is so deep in there that like there's gonna be weird kind of like, what do they call that? Not distraction, but like transmutation of like where it's just kind of it's not at a normal hip socket, so like it's gonna move, it's gonna bump and stuff, and it's like it's gonna be impingement. Jeez Louise. Okay, so you'll get like weird impingement issues. Like that's what people say, like, oh, like I feel like a click, or I feel like there's like a pinching when I do these movements. Like people get them in their shoulders and their hips all the time. Like that stuff, like like you understand like these patterns so much easier, and then you can do stuff that like, oh, like, well, if we know like that doesn't work, or that hurts, we should do this instead, right? Or like even understanding, like I know like I've heard you talk about this before, like reciprocal inhibition, right? So like your body, whatever one side does, it always does the opposite. The other side always does the opposite.
So like suitcase or suitcase deadlift. When Cadence was jacked up with her left arm.
Well, like yeah, but even if you think about like this, right? Like if I take a step, there's like a bunch of stands to get, right? So when I come here, all right, my hip is flexed, I'm gonna be externally rotated and abducted away from my body. Okay, when I do that though, the exact opposite is gonna happen here. My hip's gonna extend because it's pushing me forward. It's gonna internally rotate a little bit because you have to roll on your foot to get off your big toe, and then it's gonna pull my leg in towards my body. It's very subtle, like stupid subtle, right? But that's every time I swing, and then my arm's gonna do the same thing. When I sprint, right, when I go here, one arm is flexing, the other arm's extending. All right, and then there's also varying degrees of like, right, because like you have these three planes of motion that we talk about all the time, where it's like there is the sagittal plane that's like basically splits you in the front to back, and that's responsible for like flexion, extension, or flexion, extension. All right, so front to back, that's like this is like kind of like if you don't have this, like you're not gonna be good at much of anything else, because this is kind of like your foundation, right? That like that standard like snap down RDL like athletic position. And then from there, like you have like, I don't even know how to draw this. It's like almost like so like if this is like 3-dimensional cue, it like splits you in half down the side. That's going to be like frontal, so that's going to be side to side. And then you're going to have like this that kind of cuts you in like almost like 360 degrees. That's going to be your transverse plane. So like you have frontal. That's anything laterally. Transverse. All right. So like even just understanding this concept, like that goes into like gross anatomy. That's like, this is like every anatomy textbook. That's gonna be probably the first chapter. But then like this helps you understand how the like patterns relate to planes, right? Like if someone's like gunked up in the sagittal plane, like you can't even ask them to do this other stuff, right? So like if I can't get someone to squat on 2 feet, I'm probably not gonna get them to be able to split squat or lateral lunge or do anything with movement, right? Because like anytime you start anybody off, right, it should always be static, right? It's in place, 2-footed, symmetrical stance, and you want it to kind of make it as easy as possible, right? That's going to ensure the most success. And then there's a checklist for this that I'll share with you guys too, that I just read the other day that I thought was really good. But it's like for example, like let's look at a forward lunge, right? I know we talked about this the other day, right? Like it is hard enough to get somebody to do a good split squat, right? So let alone a forward lunge, like, and even a forward lunge to like a forward walking lunge, like that's a lot more complex in terms of like how we use this, right? Because like instead of just going like straight up and down and trying to kind of control like hips first, like can I stay tall here? Can I not bend over and like hold this weight? Can I stay stable on one leg with a support leg? And then I ask somebody to kind of do this, and like I need them to hit under their center of mass and then come up and go to the other side. Like it's there for a reason, and there are people who can 100% do it. So it's a good exercise for someone who's probably been here for like 2 years. Because I just think like it's like, let's think about like the low hanging fruit, right? It's like, do they need to lunge? No, but like, do they want to do it because they get bored of split squats? For sure. But like everybody else is like I saw this great strength training quote where it's like, good, like people who get strong and are really good at strength training do the same 15 to 20 exercises for 15 to 20 years. And like that's where you're gonna see like people who are strong, people who are like long, like who like hold off and don't get hurt, like do the same 15 to 20 things, and you're gonna be pretty good at them. Because it really does take that much time. Yeah, but like also like I lump in here like neurological stuff. Is that stuff?
Fatigue and stuff that you're talking
Fatigue, like how, like motor control, motor learning. Like you have all the like these are like classes you have to take and like by like for school, and like at the time they don't make sense at all. But like now going back, I wish I could retake them and understand that. Like they talk about like how babies develop, like the ability to move and stuff like that. Super helpful stuff. But there's probably better books out there that relate to this more that I would like. That I could probably spend $50 on and like not taking a whole semester of classes, and it would have been way easier. So don't get bogged down with the school stuff. But no, programming for sure. I would say like it's supposed to build off each other, right? So like the more kind of like general knowledge you have of science, like I said, the easier this stuff becomes. So like if we can spot like basically like there needs to be objectives for this, right? Because we go to a different gym, they're probably gonna have a different set of standards for a squat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and for the most part, I think we do a really good job with this stuff already. It's just more so understanding that like people like who are built differently, and like always coming back to anatomy, right? Like people who have really long legs and short torsos probably are gonna be really good squatters. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be very challenging for them. But they're gonna think that, hey, like I'm as old as Sarah, like I need to squat as much as Sarah, and it's like you will never be good at squatting. Like Peyton Wilson will never be good at squatting. I told him that the other day, just because like he's tall, he's got a really small torso, and he's got to get he's just long legged, and so like, and you look at like people who could do like, that's not saying he should, like, we like cut him short on depth or like make him do full range of motion stuff, but it's like, dude, like when you're squatting with guys who are 3 inches shorter than you, who have like, like no leg length, like it's different. And like, when we understand that, right, that makes us a better coach, right? Because it's not like, hey man, like you just need to go lighter. It's like, no, like there's like some reasoning behind it, and like, so for someone like that, like I think they need reasoning. They need like, oh, like makes me feel a little bit better. Like I'm never gonna be like that doesn't give him a write off to
It's
be
a
like,
fine line.
right? Because like you say like, oh, I'm just never gonna be a good squatter. I'm not gonna try squatting. It's like, hey, like you just need to squat differently in your head than you do with other people. And the same goes for like people like that. Like pulling's gonna be like easier because like you gotta think of like with this also entails like physics and like fulcrums and like levers and like how like for example like a short lever would be like a bicep curl or like a long lever would be like a lateral raise. Like how much harder is it to do? Like can you lateral raise the same amount as you can bicep curl? No, right? It's like the farther away you get from your body, like there's way more stress. And like why is that? It's pretty much because of gravity. Right, you get stuff farther away from your center of mass, just very hard, very quickly. So like even understanding that, like that's gonna play a role in like programming and like how we talk about ground contacts and jumps and like sprints. So much of that has to do with this and like how understanding how gravity, how the pressure of gravity and like all the internal forces and structures and external forces and structures that like impact movement. It's very, very easy to like not even think about that stuff, right? Because like to us, like a bunny hop's a bunny, or like an ankle jump, bunny hop, whatever you want to call it for the kids, like that's a big deal. And like determining that at a certain level, I think is like it's good to know, so like you can program it accordingly. And it's good to know just because it gives it a little bit more respect. And it's just so we're all saying the same thing.
I think with all this, another thing that I've been like thinking about in my head is like how important like individualizing is, and like talking about everybody's different anatomy and everybody's different FMP, and like that creates like an individualized program, right?
Yeah, right. The sheets are huge.
Yes.
And like we did you came in at a weird time because like the board was like, all right, like can we give kids papers and like let them like touch stuff? Like parents are gonna be weirded out by that. Obviously it forces kind of change things, but you're right, dude. Like programs don't work. Like if you're just doing some program that wasn't built for something you're trying to accomplish, right? Like if you just show up, like that's not gonna cut it. Because like everything about this is so specific, and like the specificity of programming is so broad. You really just need to know, like, all right, like what are we trying to accomplish? And that's kind of like the goal of any program is just like what are you trying to accomplish? And like once you establish that, it becomes very easy. Once you have like that kind of foundation of knowledge, like knowing these is gonna help you know this. And like honestly, like I think if we were to do this, I'd probably say like almost like personal skills would probably go at the bottom. Because I think like what you will see is that there are a lot of coaches out there who suck at all this, but they're really good at this. And like there is the science of like social behavior and like culture and all that stuff speaks very highly to stuff like this, right? Like I was listening to a podcast today where like the Golden State Warriors would eat peanut butter and jellies after every practice or every game or something like that. And like the performance staff was like, hey, we gotta get these out of here, like this is crap, like they shouldn't be eating this stuff. And like they like got pissed and like did it anyway. Like the players hated it. And it's like they just won like 3 world championships. Like they like, I don't like, it doesn't matter, right? Like that stuff is like their like PB&J, like post PB&J was a bigger deal to them than like actually like eating like a steak dinner, right, for whatever reason. So like, but like it works. And I think I left this off because like you guys already have that. Like that's not something we need to like necessarily train more. That's like the more of all this you do, I think like makes this so much easier actually, because you're like, wow, like because then your ability to want to help them and like utilize what you've like invested hard time and like struggle to learn, like that comes out through like how you present it to them and stuff like that, and just like knowing that they don't need to know any of this, but you know like the vast complexity and depth behind like each workout or each kind of exercise they're doing.
Where, since we've all kind of been talking about like body and working out now with programming, where would we put like the importance of food and recovery and nutrition on this pyramid?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I mean,
that's kind of on their pyramid and athlete. I mean,
that would be on their pyramid too, but it's like
having that knowledge would almost fall almost under like a program or like an anatomy or any of those three really. Well, not the movement, but
yeah, cause like I'd probably lump it in with this here, right? Cause this would be like recovery / like regeneration stuff. So like, cause like that's like something you program, right? Like, all right, like on low days you're gonna run tempos and we're gonna do bodyweight circuit and then you're gonna get massage afterwards, because like you want to be relaxed coming into the next day, and then like you don't want to get a massage on the day you sprint, because then you're taking away like the tensity of the tissue, the elasticity of the tissue by relaxing it way too much. So it's like, and like sleeping and like food and all that stuff is like, one, like we're not really certified to coach or program any of that stuff. That's why we just bought a bunch of protein and we're just gonna sell it here and be like, hey, take this, and then like that'll open the door for more conversations for sure. But it's really, like you said, it's so individualized, and it's like the research is so overwhelming, and just like nutrition alone for performance, that like basically I think we have a good idea as to where if you just
Like just have good wellness.
well, yeah, just eat whole foods, like don't eat stuff out of boxes, like eat whole foods.
worry about your calorie intake and protein.
Yeah, I would just say like anchor your plate in protein.
What about water? We don't talk about water.
Yeah, drink your body weight in ounces.
Wait. How many ounces are in
128. So it should be really good.
I'm probably there, a gallon and a half.
Yeah, for sure. And just like, yeah, just like, hey, like, yo, like potatoes over fries, or like wheat bread over white bread, or like
Yeah.
vegetables. Like eat vegetables. Like you don't have, like, I don't care which ones you eat. Like eat the ones you like, but like you could, like some kid like will probably go their whole life not like listening to parents, but as soon as Coach Trevor said, "Oh, yo, like you should eat these Brussels sprouts, they're delicious, and they actually make you like way healthier and stronger, and like you will play better if you eat more vegetables." You're like, oh shoot, mom. Yeah, like stop the grocery store. Like we're gonna get some vegetables.
Yeah.
That's happened.
I believe it.
So like, I don't even know where you put like influence on here, but like probably down here. But like that's big time, and we talked about that the other day, right? Or like not even the other day.
Be an off Insta influencer.
Yeah, well, it's like this stuff is great,
I agree.
and I think it's like this is like kind of like you pay to play, right? Like if you're a coach, like you have to know this stuff, but then it's like what goes above and beyond that, and that's like the branch of like impact, or like how you talk about stuff that's not training related, right? Like they should have the freedom to kind of say anything that relates to training, but then it's like, are you like holding people accountable to like a moral standard, right? Like, are you like letting kids say stuff they shouldn't say in front of you? Like, it's not like disrespectful. Are they like cussing? And it's like, hey, like, yo, like, yeah, you're not gonna talk around that in front of me. Like think of like any coach you like respect or like love dearly, right? Like they held you to a standard. There's a level of accountability, and they just like communicate that better than anybody else you ever had before. So you're like, okay, like this makes sense. Like this, like it's like out of a place of love, but it's also like stuff you don't want to do, for sure. Like it's like you have to like make people uncomfortable, but you have to find a way to do that relates to their personality. For example, like some people even as like a coach, like just like a jab in front of the group may not seem like a big deal, but like I've seen kids like when people aren't looking just like freak out over stuff like that, or like being like you got to think of like get back to like anatomy, like neurological psychology and like how people like behave in groups. Like behavioral science is huge. Like knowing like, hey, like all right, like a prepubescent like middle schooler, like no, you should know that like everything they do is to try to make themselves look better and achieve a higher status within their friends. So it's like they're literally like it's like you strip it down to like brass tacks, like they're in like their little tribe, like they're trying to be like the highest hot dog in the tribe. And like same with girls. Girls want to come off as like look at Instagram, like they want to look like every girl on Instagram who has 100,000 plus followers. So it's like if they're not doing stuff that's cool, that like freaks them out, right? It's very hard for them to be like fun. So like finding a way to get that, or like not exposing them or making fun of them in front of boys or like stuff like that, or calling them out. Like there's a time and place, but like it's like how do you get a girl who to push like what if she's on a menstrual cycle? Like that is massive. And like I don't think there should be a stigma around that in this industry. Like there really isn't, hopefully, but like people like program for girls like around that, because that's like a week where your strength's gonna be shot and like you are gonna feel like crap. You're not gonna perform well. You're not gonna play well. It's just like
You kind of forget that.
yeah, right.
Easy to forget.
Yeah, I'm like,
you don't have it
oh,
happening.
Yeah,
right.
you can't relate, so it's hard. But yeah, then that comes back to this, right? Like, it's not weird if you understand it in this context where it's like, especially if you come in knowing what you're talking about, that's gonna be a lot more beneficial than be like, hey, are you on your period? Like,
Right.
dude.
So what about if they say like, hey man, my cramps are like really bad, like they trust you enough, like Avery, I remember she talked to me about that whole issue.
Yeah, so then it's like at this point, like at that point, like you just gotta go through the motions. Like, hey, like all right, like let's just feel good, because like
Take it easy.
recovery is probably not gonna be as good. Like, it's just a deload week. It's deload week, always. Right, every 24 to 36 days, like they just hit at different times, and it's like it's hard to know. So like if you know, like hey, like someone's like backing off weight like significantly, like okay, like that's probably why, right? Or
Like,
like
do you think the
feeling it.
Charlotte thing?
Maybe, yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Thought about that. I was like, because like, did she squat at her house beforehand? No.
That's right. Yeah, that's I was thinking the same thing.
So it's like, you just gotta know, and like, it's the same thing, like trying to achieve a certain status, like, hey, like, I worked hard at home before this, just so I can like maybe not work hard here, because it's harder to work here.
Right.
It's like, did you? You should know. And like, it was very evident by the way she warmed up, the way she was like feeling, like
And
performing, like, yeah,
she
she's
was
fine.
calling and
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, people's bodies can't lie.
Yeah.
And their brain can't lie either. But no, yeah, influence is good.
What do you got another tier?
I think we'll go even.
The strength coaches pyramid.
Like, what do we need, but not as much of, but from what we already have? Because
Yeah, I mean,
it's
you're
compounding,
right, because there's a
but,
lot of like sub elements to all these for
right.
sure.
That's what I'm saying.
I feel like a part that would be huge to me and was huge to my like coaches I looked up to is like living yourself as a coach, like living a good life,
Yeah,
like lifestyle, like being a good role model, I guess you could say.
yeah, lead by example for sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like, even though I was gonna say like leadership and discipline, but like more so like organization.
I feel like organization might even fall into that program.
Yeah, it definitely could. Definitely could. I like to put it as its own thing, because like I think it's noticeably different when everything has a way of being done.
Right.
Especially out there, like when it's like, all right, like we're gonna do this, like it's always should be like we're gonna demonstrate and instruct. All right, then you're gonna do like maybe like a rep or two of that, and then like you're gonna like actually act it out. Or like you like go over with your words, show them, like give them an opportunity for questions. Good, okay, let's start. And like just like having all that prepped out, be like, hey, like as soon as we're done here, okay, 15 minutes past, like all right, we're gonna go over this. Or like, hey, like maybe we need to take an extra minute or two and like go over like how to actually bench press today. So it's like, hey, like we're gonna do this because like everything should, especially if they're new, everything should be shown. Everything needs to be demonstrated. Because like you just don't know who learns what. Like you can't expect someone who's never done a squat before to be like, hey, all right, that's why you gotta do a squat.
That's what I did with Ray yesterday. Like I know he's probably barbell squatted somewhere else before, but we went through
Yeah,
it.
no,
and I
it
was
doesn't.
like,
Yeah, it doesn't
"This
matter.
one."
Does not matter for sure. Like you did the right thing. I like it. Like never trust anybody else because like we have our own standard and it's pretty high.
So I'm curious, like, how did you? What was some key things that you told Ray?
I mean, pretty much exactly how we teach everybody else at front squat, like making sure the bar's level, making sure it's up like on our like collarbone over our shoulders and all that stuff, like crossing up here.
You always are gonna start.
Starting there, and then he even asked me, he's like, "Could I do this grip?" I was like, "Not today." That's especially after like he was saying like his goal was like play like high level baseball,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. I was just like, oh.
Yeah, if you tell them that like, hey man, like if you want like your wrist is too important to put it there, like you can do that at school, it's fine, but like you can move just as much weight doing it that way. It's just uncomfortable.
For sure.
How did it look?
Good.
Yeah, I mean
For being a long limb dude, like you got decent depth with good like mechanics like these for the whole thing, so
yeah.
not bad.
You're just looking like, hey, stay like keep your sternum point at the wall in front of you and feel your heels. It's usually gonna probably clean up about 9% of your squat problems. It's like staying tall, feeling your heels.
Top, I might think style, which could fall under like
Yeah, that
skills, but
Yeah.
style in which you coach or style you bring to all of these like things. Because if I just did it same way as
Like kind of like how you go about business.
Cressy or
Yeah.
Robertson, it's just like it's just kind of a cheap imitation that people are like, is this like really you?
Oh yeah. People can smell fake a mile away, but yeah, I like that.
Because it's not the most important thing by any stretch, but it's like it's part of the equation.
Yeah, you're right. And like I said, like I didn't really have a set like pyramid here. I just really thought like just kind of based off our talk about the research and all that other stuff, like this is just a good direction to go. What are you thinking here?
Yeah.
But, I think that'd be a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Get a little video in.